We hear from Ms. Young. We'll hear from the two young men who started all of this phase of struggle, the ones who were involved in the car wash, and then we'll take a break. Ms. Young.
I'd like to state that my name is Jacqueline Young, and as Reverend Boney stated, I am a ex-Houston police officer by choice because my tolerance level is not like these ladies sitting over here. And I felt like that I had better get the hell out of Dodge before something happened. I see that we still have our few token blacks in the command staff. Chief Dotson, Danny Turner, Kevin Robinson, and Stringfellow. Don't get me wrong, I have nothing against these people, but they are token blacks on the police department. And they are so few that I can call them by name. These are good people, and I feel like they deserve to be where they are. I do congratulate especially Chief Dotson on his position because he is the sweetest man I've ever run across in such a corrupt place. I was born in Houston, Texas. I attended and graduated from SP Waltrip Senior High. I also attended Texas Southern University where my major was general business. I just think that it's sad it had to come to this to be heard. I spent 4 of my 6 years on the police department as a secretary, which meant paperwork was shuffled from supervisors across my desk to higher-ranking supervisors. So a lot of these things that these officers are talking about, I know it happened because I had to type up a lot of stuff. I went into the Houston Police Academy in 1984, in August of 1984, and I graduated in December of 1984. And I hope by me calling out names of supervisors on a first-name basis, because I did have administrative experience, don't hamper blacks in the future getting administrative experience, because I was a secretary before I got on the department. I also was licensed after I left the police department as a private investigator. I also have my own publishing company, and I also have my record label, my own record label. I spent my probationary period in 1984 at what was back then Central Patrol, before they split it up. During my training, my evaluation stage, one of my evaluators was Officer Maurice Gartman. Officer Maurice Gartman informed me the minute I stepped foot in his car, we were patrolling the 17th district area, Westheimer, that anytime I saw a black male or a Hispanic male walking down the Westheimer streets or riding a bicycle, that they were burglars. No doubt about it. Well, me being a green rookie, I didn't have anything to say. Well, he justified it by arresting a black male on a burglary call where the complainant on the burglary call stated that he did not see anybody, he didn't have any idea who took his bicycle. The only thing he knew is that his bicycle was taken off of his porch. Well, when we left the scene after getting all the information from the complainant, we were at least, I know, maybe a mile away from the call. Officer Gartman spotted a black man walking down the street. He stopped his patrol car, grabbed the black man, threw him in the back seat, took him back to the scene of the burglary, and the complainant said, yes, that's the man. When at first he said he didn't have any idea who took his bike, he just came outside and his bicycle was gone from his porch. So I wonder how many of our men are falling victims to crimes that they did not even commit. Not only that, they need to stop putting these scary white police officers off in these black neighborhoods, killing our black men. I've been told time and time again by white officers, hey, if I meet so-and-so on the streets, I'm gonna shoot him, that's the bottom line. And I'm gonna tell you something, your lives, black men, because you are an endangered species. When you meet a one-man unit, especially a white man in a black neighborhood, you better yes, sir, from the time he talked to you until the time you leave, because he is one scary officer. You will get killed by a one-man white patrol officer. More than one, you're gonna get your butt whooped. No doubt about it. The situation in Los Angeles, that was not an isolated incident. It's been going on for years. I was transferred to Special Operations Division after I did my probation at Central Patrol. I became pregnant in 1986. Well, it was a thing with the police department that when black women became pregnant, they shipped them out of the division that they were working for. I was shipped to Special Ops. And like I said, my tolerance level is not good at all. I was shipped to dispatch. And I walked out of dispatch and I went to the basement phone, and I called my supervisor. I said, either you get down here and talk to me, or else I'm going to go file a grievance. Because every white female that ever got pregnant on Houston Police Department, positions were made open for them. Name one, Lindy Lyson. She worked special operations. She became pregnant. They opened up a position I had never even heard of. There was a white female, I don't know her name, she was working accident. When she became pregnant, they sent her up to Chief Gaines' office to sit, and I mean exactly sit, next to the secretary, because she did nothing else. And I'd also like to state that I was radar certified once I got on the police department, too. While working special operations, I had a white officer by the name of Officer Lester. He said, Officer Young, well, at that time, yeah, I was Officer Young at that time. He said, have you ever had a white boy before? Well, me knowing how I'll go off, I just sat there. I said, no. And he said, well, I tell you what, when you decide to have a white boy, would you let me know? Well, instead of me knocking his head off his neck, I didn't say anything. But I do want our black communities to know that we as black women are sexually harassed on a daily basis at this police department. Now, you may not hear anything as far as the media concerned about black women being raped. Every time you turn around, it's white women being raped. But when it happens to us, like Lieutenant Larry D. Stewart out of Southeast said, we're not considered as women. I used to work 14th District, which is South Park. I rode one man by myself. I never had a problem. I only had to drop an assist one time. But I never had a problem with those people out there in 14th District. Well, there was a Hispanic female who worked Southeast, but she passed for white because she's of Spanish descent. And she wanted to come and ride with me out at 14th District. So when they were civilianizing all these positions, Lieutenant Stewart said, well, where do you want to go? What shift do you want? What days off do you want? She said, I want to ride 14th District, which is South Park. He said, oh, no, baby. 14th District is no place for a lady. Well, what am I? Am I just a piece of meat? But I guarantee you, when I was working at Southeast Substation, Park Place, Palm Center, there was not one white female working out in Southeast, in South Park. They were all working the Hobby Airport area. And I had to put up with a lot of paperwork coming across the desk as far as supervisors with their nags and gripes with police officers, namely Lieutenant Larry D. Stewart. He hated police officers personally. I used to have to sit up and type these performance evaluations. After I had typed up stacks this thick of performance evaluations, he felt like, well, I don't like this officer. No. Instead of him getting an excellent or a good, he's going to get a fair. And he literally brought it back to me with red ink like he was a school teacher and said I had to change these, all because he personally hated these officers. Because the supervisor do have the right to change grades, but I don't think that anything personal that they have against these officers should wash. But it went on and it's still going on. When I was transferred from Special Operations to Southeast Patrol in 1987, I was slapped on the butt by a white officer by the name of Officer, they called him Ole Anderson. I was reaching down to put my purse in a bin, and he just slapped me on the butt. Well, a lot of people already tell me I look mean just by looking at me. When I turned around and I looked at him, I said, as long as you got blood running warm through your veins, don't you ever do that again. I did not file a grievance or a complaint on the officer because I had seen from prior deals what could happen to me. I would be labeled a troublemaker. I was already not liked because I stood up for what I knew was right. It was handled within the department. Not only then, when I was in Special Operations, I was slapped on the butt by Sergeant C.R. Owens, who was also a white officer. And when it happened, there were other white officers present. And it just so happened that my immediate supervisor saw the look on my face. He said, well, if you know like I know, Carl, you better apologize because it's going to be some mess. It took him a while. He stuttered a long time, but he apologized. And like I said, I had seen enough officers go through the ringer because of who you know, and when one supervisor get mad at you, you best believe they all hate you, and they're going to all be out to get you. So I didn't want that reputation. There was also another sergeant by the name of Sergeant Paschowski, who's at Southeast right now, working Park Place. He retaliated against me because he wanted me to leave work at 12 midnight and show back up at 5:30 a.m. the next morning, which, if I'm not mistaken, there's a department policy that says there must be an 8-hour lapse between each shift. Well, he claimed that I was insubordinate, and that's when the trouble began for me at Southeast. They gave me cars. The keys would not open. I told the sergeant that the keys would not even open the door. The door was locked. He said, well, in that case, miss, you call for a wrecker to open that door. So I had to go outside and call for a wrecker to come and open up my car door. Not only that, we have another black female officer. I hope she don't mind me using her name, Shirley McAllister. She should be well known. She was slapped on the butt by a sergeant. Well, Shirley complained. Ever since then, Shirley has been a mental case on HPD. She's been going from one psychiatrist to the other because HPD deems her to be crazy because she stood up for what is right. And I'm going to tell you something. On this department, if you stand up for what is right, you're a militant. You're a troublemaker. And they want you out of there. As far as white officers, you know, slapping black females on the butt, I said, well, maybe this is just a thing with white male officers, you know, and black female officers, because it's just happening so often, because I never gave anybody the inclination that I was sexually available. I never made that known. And as far as a black male officer approaching a white female officer, you think you got trouble out on the streets with a butt whooping. You don't be caught dead with a white female officer. And the way she set up and said how she was sexually harassed by a group of them, that's well known. But when a white female walks in that office and a group of white sergeants is there, everything is hush-hush. You respect that woman. She's what we call a woman. Sergeant Kinsworthy, who's now assigned at Southeast Substation Park Place, he made Sergeant Spencer, who was a black sergeant, evening shift, seem illiterate. Sergeant Spencer has a college education. And things at Southeast on evening shift is so messed up as far as paperwork that anybody who works that desk would go off in a frenzy. Well, it just so happened that whenever Spencer would work the desk, mind you, Spencer was not at work. He was a black sergeant. Sergeant Kinsworthy would sit up and low-rate Sergeant Spencer to the hilt. Well, you know why this paperwork is all messed up. Illiterate, you know what sergeant I'm talking about. But the minute Spencer would walk up, he was licking him on his butt and everywhere else. I repetitiously typed up court misses by officers who had missed court, white officers who had missed court, and I'm going to name a couple by the name of Fred Joe Pollen and Hans Martichek, who are, should I say, good old white boys, okay? I have known those boys to be out of their beat, out of their district, working extra jobs on duty, miss court, and when I type it up, because they were friends to Lieutenant Hebert and Captain John Wayne Snelson and Sergeant W.K. Ford, those court misses went like nothing ever happened. But the minute a black officer missed court, I recommend that this officer receive a day off, because the disciplinary procedure is not the same for each race of officer. I had to constantly listen at Lieutenant Larry D. Stewart and Sergeant Paschowski and Sergeant Danny Kinsworthy, Sergeant McSwain, sit in the roll calls office and sit in cahoots on how they were going to burn patrol officers, how they were going to cause officers to lose their job and get fired. Well, Lieutenant Stewart spent most of his time ordering street sergeants to follow officers. All day long, when you thought you were being patrolled by officers, well, the officers were being patrolled by sergeants, because there were supervisors who hated them personally and wanted to see them fired. Also, Lieutenant Stewart would I already mentioned that about the regradings of the performance evaluations. I was involved in what I call a damage to shop, but due to the fact I was hated, it was called an accident, where I was going over airport at Leitrim, which anybody who lives out there knows that that's a fatality location. I almost killed a 72-year-old black man coming over that bridge. Well, I missed him, and I broke a rear axle on my car. Well, the accident investigator that came out there told me, well, you know, it would have been better if you would have hit him, because if you would have hit him, he would have been held at fault. But now that you missed him, you're going to be held at fault. Also, Sergeant Kinsworthy made a statement in roll call one day. Let me clarify again, 14th District is South Park, 13th District is near Hobby Airport. Sergeant Kinsworthy said in roll call that officers working 14th District had no business staying out as long as they did on some of these burglary calls when these black people, he didn't use black people, but when these people's houses are burglarized because of the fact they don't have as many valuables as the people in 13th District. Well, apparently he hadn't ridden through South Park and some of the areas I've been in. Also, Sergeant Sobolewski, God rest his soul, I didn't have a problem with him. Sobolewski had a lot of problems with officers, okay? But Sobolewski and I had one little verbal confrontation, and we were fine. But Sergeant Sobolewski pulled me in the office one day when it was time for performance evaluations. He said, Young, look, he said, I'm pulling you in here because you know that the supervisors are mad at you. I had graded your grades according to the way that they should be. Because anybody that knew me in Southeast knew that I worked. And when I worked, I worked. And a lot of officers pulled me to the side and said, Young, you're working too hard, you're going to get in trouble. Even desk work. Anyway, Sergeant Sobolewski pulled me to the side. He said, I want you to know that these grades that's on here, he said, that's not my doing. He said, that's Lieutenant Stewart's doing. He said, because you know Lieutenant Stewart is mad at you. He said, and they hate me just the way they hate you. And the way these officers go around pretending around the station, sobbing when some of these officers get killed in the line of duty, if you could hear some of the stuff I've heard officers talk about each other, if that SOB, if that MF ever drop an assist, I'm going to be a long ways away. And they hated Sergeant Sobolewski just like they hate the color of my skin. And I'm sure they would, if I had a hidden camera, I would have gave anything to put it inside Southeast Substation to see the perpetrators in there about how sad they were that Sobolewski was killed in the line of duty. Not only that,
Officer Young, can you move to the time that you began to make the decision to resign?
Sure.
And that was during the economic summit.
Sure. Okay, and one last thing I want to say about Captain John Wayne Snelson and Sergeant W.K. Ford. We had to listen as blacks at Southeast whenever a black suspect lost their life or lost their job. Oh well, just another nigga on the woodpile. Well, during the economic summit, which was a joke, it was real bad. It was bad. Apparently, whoever thought up the economic summit, they only thought about the comfort and cushion jobs of the people that were going to be on the inside. They wanted to impress the president as well as the citizens. I had a confrontation with an officer Bedingfield, a white officer who worked night shift 3rd Ward. So that told me a lot about the reason why he was talking to me the way he was talking to me. Well, I had hit my tolerance level, and I knew it was time for me to go. And I walked off, and I told my sergeant, I said, if I come back here tomorrow to re-quote him, which he lied in my personnel file, I did not say, I hope I die. I said, I hope the sky fall. I have no reason to die. Well, they sent a sergeant to my house the next day and wanted to know why I didn't show up for the economic summit. I said, because I quit. I resigned. Well, Captain Massey ran down to Internal Affairs and filed an insubordination complaint on me and recommended that I be fired instead of taking my resignation. Well, I was born at night, but not last night. And they assigned IAD sergeants to my insubordination case after I had quit. They were coming by my house and calling my house. And due to the fact I knew the right people, which this apartment is all about, they told me what to say and told me what to do once I got that telephone call. But they recommended that I be fired because I stood up for what I knew was right. And before throwing in a towel, I did. I talked to a lot of supervisors. I tried to rectify the problem. I didn't get any help. I even talked to T.G. Colby. He said, well, officer, I can't deny that there's not corruption on this department. What do you expect me to do? What division do you like? Where do you want to go? I said, with all due respect, Chief, I said, I don't want to go nowhere. I said, I want you to help me solve my problem instead of move me from my problem, which is what HPD is known for. And in closing, I'd like to say that officers' morale have never been low because of pay. It's because of all of this stuff y'all have been listening to. And quite frankly, whether you people know it or not, we're human beings. We have feelings. If you cut us open, we have hearts. We're people too. And it's time for something to be done. And God knows I don't want to come back to HPD. I left for a reason. I'm not illiterate. I can find work. I have found work.
Officer Scott has one more brief statement she wants to make before we get our final presenters this morning.
I just wanted to say that there's a lot of black officers on the department that's having problems, but they are afraid to come forward and speak out in regards to what's taking place or what the problems that they're encountering within their division and at their stations, because they're afraid of retaliation or what might happen to them, or they may be sent somewhere they don't want to be. One particular officer came to me and stated she was very upset, and she go home and punch holes in her wall because she's upset about certain things that the supervisors say to her. one Sergeant Woodruff, went to this particular officer and told her, "I heard you was a militant black bitch." And she was very upset about that, but she refused to file a formal complaint because she was afraid what might happen to her, that she might be retaliated against. So I took it upon myself. I filed a complaint in her behalf in regards to what he said to her. Well, she went to IAD, and she was so upset with me about telling what he had done because she was afraid of what might happen at the station because of what Linda and I went through at the West Side Station dealing with them. She decided to tell him, well, yes, he did say that, but it's okay. You don't have to do anything to him. She felt like that would make things better for her, but she didn't deny that it happened. But she was so upset with me because I told her. She was talking about driving me off the Katy Freeway. But I felt that something needed to be done, or someone needed to know about it, that these things are happening. Several officers have came and told me about situations that's happening to them, but they're afraid to even come forward and speak about it. Well, I'm not afraid of them. And at one point, Captain Young called me in his office and told me, well, I talked to my people and I told them to leave you alone, and I want you to leave them alone. Well, I'm not bothering your people. It was his people that's bothering me. I only feel like I was speaking up and trying to stop the problem I was having with them, which I never did get any help from him at that station. He also made the comment to me that it won't make sense for me to keep complaining because nothing is going to be done because they're all going to stick together, which he was speaking of, as he stated, his people. Each time something happened, I named the people that was present. Just so happened they was white, and they did stick together and say that, well, they put their story together and made it look like it happened one way and mine's happened a different way.
All right, thank you very much. Thank you. We're going to go ahead and excuse these group of presenters and get our final two presenters for this session. And thank you very much. I want to